Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. I'm Tamera Loerzel, and with me is Jennifer Wilson. And we are here to talk about things talent and people related. And we know this is a conversation we've had before, you've had before, but we thought we should revisit again. And that is, how do we help people, including ourselves and our team, and probably our partners and other leaders, manage overwhelm? And we're in a peak period here, probably one of the bigger peak periods for many, not everybody. And that can lead to overwhelm. And as we're cranking up, how we're working on projects and, client emails and deadlines and everything else that is coming at us, along with our personal lives and family expectations and everything else going out in our world, it can feel overwhelming. And we thought we should stop and say, how can you as HR and talent leaders help people get out of that overwhelm, manage or overcome that overwhelm, acknowledge it first because it's real. We all experience it. Some of you might be experiencing it. So you could apply some of these strategies or ideas that we'll cover first. And then you can look and see, how can we help others manage this overwhelm? And it's a muscle a little bit that we can build, and we can come back to these strategies. It's a habit. And just like any good habit, we have to practice it. And if we stop practicing it, it gets weak. That muscle gets weak. And so we have to come back and say, what do we need to do? And some of these ideas, I think, Jen, that you and I are going to share, we know them, but we don't necessarily do them. Or in the face of overwhelm, we might get frozen and do nothing. Some people hide. We also might just get frantic and like attack our work to do like nothing other, and there's nothing else to do, but it might not be the right stuff. And then that can just snowball and perpetuate our overwhelm. And so there's different things that we might do to cause it to become bigger than it needs to be. And I guess that's what we wanted to stop and pause. And that's one of the things to manage overwhelm, is to stop and pause and acknowledge it and talk about it. So before we jump into any of those other strategies, Jen, anything you want to add from a setup for our audience today?
Well, I think you were just touching on it right there, Tamara. So I'm just going to tack on to the end of that. The very first step in managing overwhelm is acknowledging it. And as HR leaders, we sometimes want to avoid making it sound stressful or bad or high volume or
weak, like you're weak if you're
or squeezy well, I'm talking more like the window dressing we put on employment.
Yes.
We want the place to sound like fun and engaging and challenging. And, we have these great marketing words that we want to use, and I'm right there with you. But there are times when people do feel overwhelmed, and I think being able to use that word is good. It's a real word. It's not tragic.
Right.
I'm buried, I'm busy, I'm stressed. Those are less positive and also more hopeless, or something like forever and ever, amen. And overwhelmed is sort of like it's a wave of something. How can I manage the wave of overwhelm? And so I just want to acknowledge, as HR leaders, we have to make room for it. We're talking about it today because we don't think it's talked about enough. People are feeling it. And one-on-one, we're hearing it. But it's not sort of like at your place, you're running a lunch and learn about strategies to manage overwhelm. And we think that might be appropriate. So I just think, number one, like all good self-help, admit the problem, right? And then just to acknowledge that, overwhelm is a state of like too many yeses. And maybe court-ordered yeses. They weren't all necessarily, willing yeses, but we've just given too many yeses. And we've let too many people into our inbox for email, and too many people in our social media feeds and messaging, too many people in our chats and on Teams and Slack, too much volume of communication coming in and needing to be responded to, and then too many commitments, too many due dates, too many deliverables, whatever that might be. So that's usually what's causing overwhelm. And it could be variety. Sometimes I don't have that huge a volume, but I have such variety that the gear shifting is overwhelming. So I guess my first thing, if we could acknowledge that we're overwhelmed, maybe one of the first strategies is like, how come, what's causing it? And then when you acknowledge that you're overwhelmed, then you start to identify the cause, managing expectations around you. I think that's a huge one, to just say, hey, right now I'm in a slight state of overwhelm and I am backing up and reorganizing in an effort to reprioritize and make sure that, first things come first. And so it's going to be a little bit until I get to this, and starting the process of resetting expectations or managing expectations around, perhaps too high a volume and too much variety. That's where I would start with overwhelm if I was coaching someone, and that's where I try to start when I feel it myself.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a big one, to figure out what priorities are. And you can start communicating before that. You can say, I'm going to go figure them out and I'll come back to you. I think
Yes.
that might be where you were. It's
Yeah.
like, I need to go manage, just, hey, this is where I am and I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to figure out what my priorities are. And then figure out if what you think the priorities are, and then get agreement and alignment on that. Because I think that's sometimes what causes overwhelm is I make up what I think is important. You're making up what you think is important for me, and somebody else is, and the client is. And we need to figure out what are the right order of importance and when are they all due. I think that's a big one, is we don't always have agreed upon by when dates. We might know an end client date. We're really good, especially in this profession, managing against that, but we don't have agreement between us internally about what to expect from each other. And so sometimes when you go back and say, hey, I'm going to figure out what's overwhelming me, sometimes that's what it is. I don't have clear enough by when dates on everything. And so I'm making it up, or everything feels urgent. And it isn't necessarily urgent. And if there are competing priorities, there are several things that are urgent. I can figure out, how do I timeline them? What other resources might I need? Can I move something else? And then I can go back and communicate that. So I think that's the next immediate step, from where you were just a minute ago, Jen, is I'm going to manage expectations. And sometimes I have to go get clarity and agreement about what those expectations are. And sometimes I have to negotiate or renegotiate what those are. But often we don't have enough specificity to know. And so I have to go get clarity about that. And maybe I can propose it if they didn't give me a by when date, by the way. I can propose, hey, I have this, I can get it to you by Tuesday. Does that work? What were you picturing? Or if I know what it is, or I don't, we can negotiate. So anyway, I think that would be a next step to help manage that. And you don't have to do that by yourself. I think I would just add that, to sit over here and try to do it by myself, I can make up some of it, but sometimes it's super helpful to talk to a peer or a mentor or a supervisor or somebody in HR and say, here's all the stuff. And how do we pull it down and help prioritize it? Because they're not attached to it. They're not in that overwhelm. They can see it clearly, clearer, and they don't have that emotional response to it. So it's 15 minutes. It doesn't have to take that long. And I think we argue, hey, I don't have time to stop and prioritize. I don't have time to go have that conversation. But then I just spin my wheels and perpetuate it. And that's not healthy. We ultimately are not as productive as we could be. It's not good for our mental health either. So.
Well, Tamara, I was going to go there. I think it's so much easier to reprioritize and reorganize with the help of a good operational administrator, or really all these other titles that you listed that are possible people in your life that you could say, hey, I need help. Sometimes the overwhelm is a combination of pressure from the job and pressure from outside the job. And sometimes the help, or the I need help reorganizing, or the resetting expectations, is trying to organize work to make it smaller if home life or something in your family is overwhelming, And it's real and it's not changeable right now. Sometimes that's what there is to do. Sometimes it's the opposite. Home needs to settle down right now because work is a tsunami. And maybe I didn't manage expectations at home about that tsunami, and they're sort of being needier than I need them to be right this minute. And it's not sort of valid, important, super urgent stuff. So I think there's also this bridging of where is it coming from? What's the source of it? The other thing I think we might have stepped over, and I just want to briefly touch on it, is how do you know if you're overwhelmed? Well, you start getting grumpy. You start getting grouchy. You feel snarky. You're kind of muttering under your breath. You're complaining about stuff. Something comes in and you make a noise when it comes in your inbox or something like, oh, you're, I don't know, some people might break down and cry. You're snapping, whatever it is, you're ignoring, you're hiding. That's a real good one. Tamara and I
You're not sleeping.
Now, the last thing you can do when you're overwhelmed is go hide out. You can go hide out. You could take a no day. My mother called it a no day, where you just do nothing. You say no to everything, do nothing, including getting dressed. But you have to tell somebody that you're up to that because the tsunami's building behind you and it's going to spill over and hit other people at some point. So you want to like manage expectations. Like, I need a day to regroup mentally and physically, and then I'll be back at it. Sometimes that's a strategy. It's not a good idea for multiple days unless you're truly ill. Hiding from it doesn't help. Going and confessing and getting support, like Tamara suggested, helps immensely. The other thing is, Stephen Covey and his 7 Habits, he really is was a smart guy. When he wrote about the whole idea of eat the frog first. If you don't know where to start, you don't want to sort through the pile with anybody right now, find your ugliest thing in the pile that you're dreading and start on it first thing tomorrow morning. And if you want, you can combine eat the frog first with the Pomodoro method, which is go 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off of the ugly frog thing. And just tell yourself, I'm going to tackle that thing for 25 minutes. And I'm going to stand up for 5 minutes and walk away from it. And then I'm going to come back to it for 25 minutes. And then I'm going to, and for some of you, you have like this really hairy, awful return you have to deal with, or, a very significant analysis report from some audit data that you pulled, or something that you are avoiding. And it's overwhelming you, that it's like smoldering over there in the pile. And so the eat the frog first strategy can really help move that thing along and get it out of your hair. And so just a couple of ideas for tackling some of this.
Yes. Well, I'm going to follow on the Stephen Covey. I have a couple ideas. And one is his whole time management quadrants. And when we're overwhelmed, we're in quadrant 1, hair is on fire. And, just like whacking the next mole, at the carnival. And sometimes we need to do that. Sometimes we just have things we need to get done and we just need to move through it. But even during our most peak periods, we need to lift our head and say, what can I do over in quadrant 2, the quadrant of proactivity, important, not urgent, not my hair is on fire, which is over there in quadrant 1. What do I need to do to keep other things moving, or that could reduce some of that my hair is on fire? And part of it could be, giving people feedback on my team so they stop making the same mistake so I don't have to stop correcting it. Like, we hear that argument all the time. I don't have time to give feedback during peak periods. Yet, if you did, you would actually get more time back. So, but also delegating, planning, mentoring people, writing recaps so clients know where you're at. Those kinds of things, I think we want to push off to the side. Exercise, meditating, yoga, walking, running, whatever, Tai Chi, whatever it might be. We want to say, I don't have time for that. Yeah, it
Later.
is
I'll do it later.
later when I'm not as busy outside of my peak period. Yeah, you could use it more. It will give you more oxygen and your bloodstream will flow better and you will be more productive. You'll be more clear. You won't feel like breaking down and crying as much, maybe a little, but it will help you immensely if we stop and do that. And then I like your frog idea. And, if I'm going to manage myself and my overwhelm, and a good habit to build is, what are the 3 things I have to do today? And if there was something I promised that's not in those 3 things, I need to go communicate it and reset expectations. But then I won't have Jiminy Cricket, gnawing at me all day, chirping in my ear all day. And I can get some immediate priorities. And then as other things, because we always have the unexpected that come in, I have room for those if I know, hey, here's the 3 things that I need to get done before I turn my laptop off. And we can prioritize those on a daily basis. And some people do that in the morning. Some people do it before they leave at the end of the day. I like it the morning because I feel fresher, but that's my work style, my timing. So those are a couple other ideas to help manage that.
The other thing is to realize that whatever it is that's at the source of the overwhelm, it's probably not permanent. Not that's not always true, but it's likely changeable. Could be transient, which means it's here today and gone tomorrow. But even if it was here today, it's not. It's not in cement often. We can change it. I could say to myself, I am overwhelmed every year by this particular project. Next year, this project's going somewhere else. It's either leaving this fold and we're not doing it at the firm anymore, or it's coming off my plate. I can't do it anymore. I don't like it, and it makes me crazy. So I feel like sometimes when we're overwhelmed, we're super victimized, borderline martyred or something. And it makes it feel like I have to, and it'll never end. And it can be very dramatic. And I'm not trying to minimize overwhelm. We're talking about it today because both Tamara and I experience it from time to time. And it's real, and we want to acknowledge that. So I'm not trying to say don't overwhelm shouldn't feel bad. It probably feels yucky, So I am saying that, but we got to be careful that our self-talk doesn't convince us that it's sort of perpetrated by others, and it's someone else's fault that I'm in this mess. And we're 100% responsible for our success in life and at home, and at work, and all these places. We are 100% responsible. We can change things. So another thing to do in overwhelm is to write down, like, what am I going to stop doing in the future? Like ideas for when this little period ceases, what could I shift so I don't get here again? And I think that could give you some feelings of powerful instead of powerless, and the possibility of shifting some stuff. And I know we could say, I'm going to automate this, like that's a possibility, but also just, I'm going to fire this one, or I'm going to raise my hand and say, it's time for me to come off this 1099 committee, or it's time for me to, to move off of this particular piece of this project. I've done it for the last 7 years. I'm not just overwhelmed, I'm burnt out. And it's some kind of combination there. And so just part of the overwhelm coaching, if you're giving it to others, is what could we change later? And to get them to presence that, which might make them feel a little bit less trapped for life.
Yes. I'm going to go back to something you said towards the beginning of this conversation, and that is that we don't normally talk about this at work.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that talent leaders, HR folks could presence and discuss, make it okay to talk about, and teach some of these strategies. Because I think there's some managers out there, and I'm using managers like people managers out there, that can be just like, pull up your bootstraps. We got to get it done. And there is not any space or room to say, I'm overwhelmed. I need help prioritizing. So we don't. And that can cause a whole, ripple effect of consequences when that happens. And others might feel like I need to back off, and they go the opposite end of the, pendulum there. And so, how can we teach some of these strategies to help people make sure they have by when dates, make sure that they are getting agreement on priorities, walking through their work to do, what can push, what can stay the same. I know that we do that for a lot for each other on our team, not just you and I, but we do that, for each other on our team. And so if we can talk about that and this idea of eat the frog and some of Covey's strategies and some time management strategies could help. And then who do we need to communicate to? And it's okay to communicate, reset expectations or clarify expectations or negotiate. And so if we could have some lunch and learns, or we could have some discussions in manager meetings about some tools to give them, and they could practice right there in that meeting on their stuff, and then they could use it to help their team. And we all would just operate so much better and feel so much better about the work we're doing and linking arms and getting through this time period. It wouldn't be so burdensome or feeling like a victim or like,
Lonely.
Yes.
It
Yes.
can be lonely.
Yeah.
Everybody's putting out a front of looking good and being competent and on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And and not wanting to be vulnerable until you're in meltdown mode, so letting it be a little bit more authentic and genuine. The other thing, Tamara, is leaders need to be in touch with their people during peak periods, and we need to ask, how are you really? What's working? What's not?
Mm-hmm.
How can I help you? 4 questions. We tell them to you all the time. We remind you of them. We have to check in with our people, especially those who are working at distance. If we don't do that, we might not see the overwhelm until it starts to really fray, and things might get out of hand and be hard to come back from. So make sure that no matter how busy we all are, I hate that word, that we're not too busy to check on our valuable, important people and make sure they feel supported in this. And if we can't because we're overwhelmed, that we work with HR to figure out who can check with the people that we're supposed to be checking with. So we don't miss the chance to help them with this too. And it's normal. This isn't special to accounting. This isn't special to accounting, and it's not special to 2026. Overwhelm at work is normal, and it's a sign of growth, and it's a sign of expanded capacity, if you will. And I'm taking on more, and we're taking on more. That's all normal. It's sort of how we manage it and how honest we are about it and how sort of real and quick we are to start addressing it. That's what separates great firms from just the average.
Yes. Love it. So if you have strategies for managing overwhelm, we would love to hear them. Or if you have any questions about anything that we discussed today, you can reach out to us with those as well. And otherwise, we hope you have a great week. We look forward to seeing you on the next HR Huddle. And thanks for joining us. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.